Hey YouTube, Untamed here. So, as the title suggests, I figured I'd talk through how I personally afford each of my three TRD Pros. For those of you stopping by for the first time, I do have a 2017 Tacoma TRD Pro in cement gray, of course a 21 Tundra TRD Pro here in Lunar Rock, and then a super white 21 4Runner TRD Pro as well. So how do I afford them? I mean, I'll answer the question up front so you don't have to wait 8 minutes into the video to try to hear it. So I mean, for me, how it worked out was I personally just went to college, and I was very fortunate that I was a little bit of an uber nerd in high school and got pretty good grades, and it allowed me to be in a position to get a full ride scholarship throughout college for my undergrad in particular. So that kind of initially paved the way. And right when I graduated with my undergrad, it was in communication studies, and I purposely chose a broad topic. Hey Peanut. Crushed it. Purposely chose a broad topic for the sake of always being able to quote-unquote market myself or sell myself to an employer. But like I said, I was very fortunate to be able to jump right into the workforce with a really good job, I think, right afterward. It's a job that I still hold 8 years later, and I do purposely keep that off of my YouTube channel just for the sake of, I don't want anyone to ever think that my opinions and views are of my organization. So I hope most of you will respect that. But it's a good organization, and most of you, I think, would appreciate what it is and what it stands for. But we'll leave it at that. So I'm still working for that particular organization. What else? So between going to school, actually, I'll add on to that. So, I mean, because of the organization that I work for, I was able to pursue an MBA and PhD and have it covered. So that was strictly me lucking out with being a part of the organization that I work for. They were able to cover that for me with, zero dime out of my pocket. Really just took the initiative to want to do it. And I'll kind of get to my point on that here in a few minutes. But between school and jumping into the workforce with a pretty good job, again, not having any school debt is a huge thing. A lot of my peers, when they're graduating with their undergrad, they were graduating with $40,000, $50,000 in student debt. And that oftentimes, as I'm sure many of you can even relate to, that is something that plagues us for many years to come. So I'm very grateful and fortunate that I was able to graduate without it. So schooling, and then the second piece is real estate. So I purposely, I admittedly, I think I just lucked out when it came to real estate. I do think it's a safer bet. Historically speaking, real estate tends to, with the exception of a couple recessions, right, in 2008, they dipped down along with everything else at that time. But, historically speaking, real estate tends to be a pretty promising bet, and for my job, I have to move pretty frequently. And each time I move, we tend to buy a house. Except for here, this time, moving out here to Seattle, we're only here for a year, 10 months really. So we, of course, rented while we're here. But each time we move, we buy a house, and like I said, luck. Every time we move just a few years later, we've been able to fortunately sell our homes for more than what we paid. And we came out just a little bit ahead. Not a lot, but enough ahead where, if you could live somewhere for free and make a little bit of coin on the end, that's pretty cool. So we're very fortunate that we were able to do that. The only time I actually purposely pursued real estate, buying land for a profit, was when we lived in Wyoming. If you guys remember from my old videos, we had 5 acres on our piece of land there, which isn't uncommon for Wyoming, as you'd imagine. But right across the actual gravel road from us, we had there were 2 other 5-acre plots, 10 acres. So we purchased both of those 5-acre plots because after having lived there for a year plus, we saw how quickly they were selling and how quickly new buildings, new houses were being put in. So we witnessed it firsthand. We're like, oh, well, it's definitely a promising, booming area. Let's go ahead and capitalize on it. Not to mention, we're saving ourselves our nice view of the open land out there, right? So that's kind of our going into it mindset, and heaven forbid we got stuck with it. Having 10 acres somewhere isn't always a bad thing. So we bought the 10 acres, and not too long after, once we found out we were going to be leaving, we posted them for sale. And we posted it by owner. We didn't go through an agent because it's property. What are they going to show? Point at the open land and grass? So we just put our own signs in it in the fields, And really within a week, not even a week, I think really within like 2 or 3 days, we had someone knocking on our doorstep because our neighbor saw them looking at the property, and they just pointed over, say, oh yeah, they live right there. They knocked on our door, and he's like, hey, listen, I want this property. We're coming from, I think it was Utah. What can secure the deal? And he ended up leaving a $5,000 check as a deposit, and he bought both of them for just $2,000 less than my asking price. So $1,000 less per plot, which turned into a pretty good profit. So I mean, when you talk real estate, you gotta consider capital gains, right? And that will vary a little bit based off location, but that's just something to consider too. When you make profit on it, it becomes a part of your income, and then it's taxable stuff too. So I'm not going to dive into the real estate stuff, nor am I going to pretend like I'm an expert on it, but it's just something to consider too. So really, between schooling, graduating debt-free from college, and being able to market myself in a great way, if I were to decide to leave my organization, I'll be in a comfortable position. So all this to say, I think the most important thing for you to do is to invest in yourself. So invest in yourself before you start investing in toys. And I mentioned this in one of my previous videos, but I mentioned it at the very end of a 30-minute monologue. So maybe a whole lot of you didn't really hear it, but in my personal opinion, and I know you don't need to hear this from me, some random dude on YouTube, but in my personal opinion, if you invest in yourself, you're putting yourself in a position to never really have to worry about money. But you should never go into it with money being your main driver in life, right? So these are just things. I love this truck, it's sweet. You guys know I'm obsessed with cool vehicles, but they're just things at the end of the day. And it always sucks because there's always the people who have the cool things that are the ones telling you that, which is annoying. I get it, but it's true, right? I mean, the things that matter to me truly in life are the people that I love and the relationships that I have. I am a firm believer of, if you put good out into the world, it'll come back to you. It's not always instant, which is why you get a lot of bitter people. You're like, wait a minute, I'm good all the time. I'm so nice all the time. I'm good to people. But I feel like the world, I still have I still get shafted, XYZ reasons, so, but I think it doesn't always come back to you instantly, so I am a firm believer of the golden rule, treat others the way you'd like to be treated. I'm a firm believer of that. And again, if you put good out in the world, I think it will come back to you 9 times out of 10. But that, again, shouldn't be your reason to be good. You should want to be good, for other reasons, not just to get rewarded for it. But again, you don't need to hear that from me. So all that to say, schooling, that's what worked for me. And then real estate, lucking out a few times, admittedly. That's how I afford each of the 3 rigs here. So if you guys remember, I did have the Land Cruiser. The Land Cruiser we had a loan on, and I purposely traded that in for the 4Runner to clear that loan, if you remember. So we had a pretty sizable loan, in my opinion, on the Heritage Edition. But because I knew we were going to be moving here in 10 months, I knew we were going to want to buy another house at our next location. So I didn't want to be bogged down with a car loan that would perhaps hinder our ability to get the maximum loan with the lowest interest rate, right? So that was kind of the driving function of clearing out that loan and getting the 4Runner instead. Not to mention, there's a lot more peace of mind knowing that you have the titles to your vehicles. It feels good actually owning the things, right? Rather than the bank owning them. Anyways, so a lot of meowing from my end, but I hope some of you can find some use of this and can appreciate the message here, and again, just live by the golden rule, and I think 9 times out of 10 it'll return in a positive fashion to you. So I'll leave off the video there. I appreciate you guys watching as always, and until next time.